You could say that one crossed a line. You feel me? Honestly, because in everything you know and I think, I'd like to believe that right now I see she's thriving in all she's doing. I've always said I wish her nothing but success. I'd like to think that if she's being completely truthful, she knows I never had anything but positive intentions for her. And the way things unfolded at that moment, we were at a particularly sensitive point. Buckle up, because Mona Scott just shook the industry with a move that's got Love and Hip Hop fans yelling, "Wait, what?" You read that correctly? Mona Scott is letting go of none other than Kirk Frost, Rasheeda, and Young Jock. And no, this isn't some gimmick or a storyline twist from the new season. This is legit. But the big mystery is, why? What exactly pushed Mona Scott, the genius behind it all, to cut ties with her own main cast like this? Was it Kirk's repeated absences? Rasheeda allegedly pulling strings behind closed doors? Or were those sketchy private meetups between Kirk and Young Jock what really set off alarm bells? Are we about to witness a full-scale reality TV fallout? And now, reports say the off-screen drama is worse than ever. Could there be more to this chaos than anyone realizes? Stick around, because we're digging into the juicy details you won't find anywhere else. Mona Scott may have just made the boldest move in reality TV to date. Don't go anywhere. This is just the beginning. Hold tight, because what we're about to uncover might flip your whole view of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. Mona Scott, the mastermind of the series, just made a decision shaking the entertainment scene to its core. She axed 3 of the biggest names: Kirk, Rasheeda, and Young Jock. And it's not for the reasons you'd assume. This is a story full of betrayal, behind-the-scenes chaos, and power grabs that have been simmering for months. And believe me, you don't want to miss a second. Mona Scott's always been known for her tough approach, but this time she went all in. Cutting Kirk, Rasheeda, and Young Jock wasn't a snap decision. It was the result of years of behind-the-scenes mess, clashing egos, and way too many hidden agendas. But here's the kicker. They weren't booted just for misbehavior on set. Nope, there's a deeper plot here. This goes far beyond just showing up late or throwing tantrums. This is about loyalty, or the lack of it. Let's break it down. First up, Kirk. He's been a regular on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta for years. If you've watched, you know his record's not spotless. But this wasn't just more of the same bad boy behavior. He was outright sabotaging the show. Picture a guy acting like he's above it all, ignoring calls from producers, strolling in hours late and expecting everyone to revolve around him. That's Kirk. Mona finally said enough's enough. If he wasn't going to take the show seriously, she was ready to make an example of him. Respect the production, or get out. Now on to Rasheeda, the queen bee of Love and Hip Hop. She's got a commanding presence on screen, but behind the camera, she was making big moves. Rasheeda didn't just want her role, she wanted the reins to the whole storyline. She started skipping shoots, turning down scenes that didn't match her version of events. She tried to control the show's direction, pressing Mona to reshape things in her favor. But Mona saw through the manipulation. Rasheeda's behind-the-scenes power plays were creating tension everywhere, and Mona wasn't about to let one cast member rewrite her show. Rasheeda wasn't simply opting out of scenes. She was trying to reshape the entire narrative. And that kind of interference, it was a deal breaker. Mona's vision comes first. If Rasheeda couldn't play by the rules, she had no place in the spotlight. And once Mona makes a call, there's no undoing it. So now you've got Kirk and Rasheeda, 2 of the most influential cast members, acting like they run the place. But wait, there's more. Enter Young Jock. He's always been a wild card on the show. While he wasn't as infamous for behind-the-scenes drama, his bond with Kirk was a time bomb. These 2 weren't just co-workers. They were plotting partners. They were making plans beyond the show. And when you start scheming behind Mona Scott's back, things get real messy, real fast. Was this a scheme? Kirk and Young Jock weren't merely acting like a couple of pranksters stirring up some chaos. No, they were in talks with other networks, trying to launch a brand new show that didn't include Mona Scott at all. They had plans to completely cut Mona out and build a fresh platform just for themselves. That's right, they weren't simply gossiping behind someone's back. They were actually plotting to replace her. If that seems shady, it's because it absolutely was. And Mona, being the sharp producer she is, caught on quickly. The last straw came when Kirk and Young Jock's sneaky actions escalated from hushed talk to full-scale drama. Kendra, a name you'll hear more of soon, ended up at the center of this chaos. She had connections to both Kirk and Young Jock that made things awkward for their respective partners, Rasheeda and Jock's wife. Rumors about the nature of those relationships began flying, and things escalated quickly. Kirk made some questionable remarks about Kendra that didn't sit well with Rasheeda. This scandal blew up off camera and was on the verge of erupting publicly. Things got worse when the tension spilled over into production. We're talking full-on confrontations. Rasheeda began accusing producers of staging fake scenes and insisted certain parts be refilmed to fit her own storyline. This wasn't just drama for TV, it was disrupting the show's production itself. The conflict got so intense that security had to be called in. Kirk even went as far as trying to shut down filming, demanding the cameras stop rolling. At that moment, Mona had no other option. The line had been crossed. Without hesitation, Mona Scott made her move. She ended their contracts. No final scenes, no emotional send-offs, just a cold and calculated, "You're done." The news spread like wildfire, and fans were stunned. How could Mona, the creator of their fame, let them go so easily? But her decision wasn't only about the show. It was about maintaining order, loyalty, and respect. Kirk, Rasheeda, and young Jock had all stepped out of bounds, and Mona wasn't going to tolerate it. With those terminations, the entertainment industry was left in shock. And this wasn't just a loss of cast members. It signaled the downfall of Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta, the series that once ruled reality TV. Let's face it, if you come for Mona, you better be ready to face the consequences. And Kirk, Rasheeda, and young Jock were about to find out the hard way that there's no bouncing back from a betrayal like this. Now, what actually unfolded behind the scenes? I've got the inside story, straight from anonymous insiders with all the tea. You won't believe how deep this drama runs. Let's start with Kirk and Rasheeda. What wasn't widely known is that these two weren't just trying to manipulate the show's storyline. They were attempting to undermine Mona's entire hold over the Love and Hip Hop empire. As their behavior became more unpredictable, rumors began circulating that Kirk and Rasheeda had been contacting competing networks. Their objective? Launching a new reality show where they'd have full creative control without Mona's dominance. That's right, they were sabotaging the very show that catapulted them to fame. This wasn't just a struggle for power. It was a complete backstab against the woman who gave them their start, and it doesn't stop there. They also tried to portray themselves as victims. Rasheeda especially began claiming she was being treated unfairly by the network, alleging the production staff edited her scenes to portray her negatively. As her anger intensified, she pushed harder to control how her story was told. She didn't just want to be in the story. She wanted to be the one crafting it. When Mona refused, Rasheeda pushed back hard, trying to rally others on set against Mona's direction. Kirk wasn't any more professional. His chronic tardiness and ignoring calls made it evident he'd checked out. What Mona didn't realize initially was that Kirk had already been in contact with producers from rival networks. He and young Jock had been secretly collaborating to create their own show, without Mona in the picture. Once Mona uncovered the truth, she acted swiftly. And then there's young Jock. His role added another layer to this whole mess. He was the one keeping the friction between Kirk and Rasheeda alive. He kept feeding the tension, making sure it never simmered down. Jock also played mind games, telling both Kirk and Rasheeda they didn't need Mona and could succeed on their own. But here's the twist. Jock wasn't just causing trouble on Love and Hip Hop, Atlanta. He was actively plotting alongside Kirk to build their own series. They had already arranged meetings. They had already scheduled meetings with producers from competing networks, attempting to lock in a new deal. But the entire time, they acted as though they were still loyal to Mona, all while scheming behind her back. The most shocking part? Jock and Kirk were using Kendra, the same Kendra caught up in all their relationship chaos, as a piece in their strategy. They understood that the public would be paying close attention to the drama involving Kendra, so they deliberately kept the tension high to stay in the spotlight. They played both sides, pretending everything was fine on Love and Hip Hop while secretly planning their departure. Then came the critical moment, the day Mona Scott found out what had really been going on behind her back. Security was brought in, production faced a major shakeup, and it didn't take long before Mona lost patience. Rasheeda had already become unpredictable on set. After months of refusing to shoot scenes unless she approved them and starting unnecessary issues with the producers, her final meltdown happened during a taping session. She accused the scene of being fake and lashed out at the producers, claiming they were manipulating her image. By that point, Rasheeda was out of control, and her tirade sent the crew into disarray. Security intervened, and Kirk even tried to halt filming. That's when Mona reached her breaking point. She saw that if Kirk and Rasheeda were willing to go this far, publicly embarrassing the staff, undermining the direction of the show, and actively turning against the network, they no longer belonged on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. She canceled their contracts on the spot and made a public statement. No one is above the show. But that wasn't the end. Kirk and young Jock still believed they could walk away without Mona fully discovering the extent of their plans. However, Mona wasn't about to let them off that easy. What she did next was sharp and merciless. She used her industry connections to leak details of the secret meetings Kirk and Jock had held with other networks. The media exploded. The betrayal of Mona Scott had reached a new peak, and public opinion began to shift. The same fans who once rooted for Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jock now saw them as deceivers, opportunists, and manipulators. Mona had flipped the script and turned the scandal into a ratings juggernaut. She had no plans to let them leave quietly. Mona wasn't just defending her brand. She was publicly dismantling their deception. No one pulls one over on Mona Scott, not while she's in charge. As the drama among Mona Scott, Kirk, Rasheeda, and young Jock continued to unfold, the fallout grew more intense. Mona wasn't sitting back anymore. She took full control of the narrative, exposing the double cross and working the situation from behind the curtain. What happened next was pure fireworks. The media was in a frenzy. Fans were shocked, and Mona's authority was solidified. Everyone now understood. Crossing Mona Scott came with serious consequences. But the real cost of Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jock's actions was just beginning to show. Now that the betrayal had been made public, the backlash was swift. Mona didn't just fire them. She was set on ending their careers. Networks that had shown interest in working with Kirk and Jock began retreating fast. They realized that being linked to them could damage their own reputations. Mona not only controlled the narrative, but also had the unwavering support of a massive fan base that now wanted to see Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jock fall from grace. And the punishment didn't stop there. As the scandal widened, potential legal trouble came into focus. Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jock might have believed they could slip away quietly, but justice was slowly catching up. Media outlets that had been covering the controversy began to dig deeper, pulling in accounts from insiders who had worked closely with the trio. Soon, leaked clips, explosive interviews, and anonymous sources started to emerge, exposing even more of the secret plan these stars had been hiding. Rumor had it, Kirk and Jock weren't just trying to spin off their own show. They were plotting to steal Mona's entire love and hip-hop concept. They went so far as to try to recruit other cast members for their new venture, promising them better offers and greater creative freedom. But Mona wasn't letting go without a fight. She wasn't playing checkers. She was playing chess. She understood the media game perfectly, and she had the audience on her side. She turned the chaos to her advantage, shaping the story to her benefit. Mona positioned herself as the victim, but also as a powerhouse executive willing to take bold moves. The press couldn't get enough of her, and the ratings for Love and Hip Hop Atlanta's ratings soared. But behind the curtains, Mona wasn't just guarding her brand, she was mapping out her next major play. With Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jock now fully exposed, she began reorganizing the Love and Hip Hop dynasty. She was clearing out anyone whose loyalty was in doubt. It became a test of allegiance, and if you failed, you were out. Now let's shift to what followed with Kendra. As many know, Kendra got swept up in the drama between Rasheeda and Kirk. What most didn't see coming, though, was how she ended up a tool in the power struggle. Kirk had been playing both ends, and Kendra was clueless that she was being used for leverage. But when the shady meetings with rival networks were exposed, Kendra got pulled even deeper into the chaos. She was iced out by everyone, and her career took a serious nosedive. Nobody wanted to associate with her anymore. She became collateral in Kirk and Jock's climb to the top. For Kendra, this wasn't just a small hit. It was a total breakdown. The public saw her as yet another casualty of betrayal, and the backlash wasn't letting up. As for Kirk and Rasheeda, the damage at home was intense. Rasheeda's image was already on thin ice after her meltdowns and resistance to production. But once word got out about the secret show plans and sneaky moves, her standing took a massive nosedive. Once one of the most respected names on the show, Rasheeda now stood on shaky ground. Kirk, meanwhile, was completely alone. The good guy act was no longer believable. His bond with Rasheeda was crumbling, his place in the industry uncertain. and his image went from respected to completely stained. And young Jock? Yeah, he thought he could walk away untouched, but he too felt the backlash. He'd been the puppeteer through much of it, but even he couldn't dodge the consequences. His career, which had been building momentum, was now in jeopardy. With his betrayal exposed, he became isolated from his allies. All this led to one undeniable truth. The betrayal was real, and Mona Scott had come out on top. She took back control of the story, dismantled her rivals, and revealed their deception. She used their schemes against them, and in doing so, solidified her position as the powerhouse behind love and hip-hop. But the aftermath wasn't only about Kirk, Rasheeda, and Jock's downfalls. The bigger question became, what did this mean for love and hip-hop Atlanta moving forward? Mona had made the tough call, to remove anyone potentially conspiring behind her back. But she also understood the audience would be watching closely to see how she handled it. Would she keep the show going, or was this the start of an entirely new chapter? What was clear, Mona wasn't finished cleaning house. Viewers saw the fallout in real time, and more cast members were clearly on the chopping block. Loyalty was now the only currency that mattered. The warning had been issued. Cross Mona Scott, and your career ends here. What a ride! Mona Scott aired the truth, and it's obvious. Betrayal doesn't pay in the world of reality TV. But with all this chaos, the big question is, what's next? Can Kirk, Rasheeda, and young Jock bounce back from this scandal, or is their time in the spotlight officially over? If you're as stunned as we are, don't miss a beat. Smash that like, subscribe, the Pop Culture Tea, and turn on those notifications. We've got more juicy updates on the way. And hey, we want to hear from you. Was Mona Scott right to make this move, or is she playing with fire? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's get into it. Stay locked in. We'll keep you posted on all the wild updates.